use your craft to be able to create value. And once you do that repeatedly and you're able to talk in those terms, companies want to embrace you because companies look for you because of value you can create, that sort of thing.
Welcome to the Chief AI Officer Podcast,
where AI meets leadership.
And here is your host, Sanjay Puri.
Welcome to the CAIO Podcast, where we delve deep into the world of Chief AI Officers, exploring their journeys, insights, and challenges in steering AI initiatives within their organizations. I'm your host, Sanjay Puri, and today we have a very special guest joining us. Our guest is Jim Jacobs, the Executive Director, Digitalization, Advanced Analytics, and Artificial Intelligence at Cummins. Cummins is a $35 billion global leader in power solutions, encompassing 5 business segments: components, engine, distribution, power systems, and Accelera by Cummins. With an extensive global manufacturing and service network, Cummins is at the forefront of technological innovation. Jim, I want to thank you for joining us today on the CIO podcast. We have a global audience, people who have interest in AI, people who participate in AI, CEOs, policymakers, AI aficionados. For them, could you please share a brief overview of your career journey and your current role at Cummins?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that introduction, Sanjay. It's really exciting to be at Cummins at this time where the environment is changing face as we know it, and being a company that is highly motivated and highly directional in terms of reducing that burden for the planet is really exciting. I got into Cummins because of that promise, and the CEO very proudly talks about the Destination Zero journey, which is a 2050 journey to be able to reduce emissions and be carbon neutral in many cases. So I handle the part which is digitalization, which is obviously the subject matter of the discussion today, and how digitalization, advanced analytics, and of course, artificial intelligence now, which is the trend, help the businesses and operations improve efficiency, reduce costs, and then thereby provide value to the customers. That's the differentiation model that we have in Cummins. And, it's been an exciting journey for me. I started my journey with IBM, which was my dream job. And that was because technology was a big deal then. And then I think during the dot-com bust, technology took a back seat, and strategy and operations and mergers and acquisitions was more in the forefront. So I was able to switch my journey to business development, mergers and acquisition, strategy. And I did that for a long while for a Fortune 50 company, Fortune 100 company as well. And then got into Cummins, back into technology again, running AI and digitalization here. So it's been a fantastic journey until for the last couple of years that I've been here, and we've done some great transformational projects, and we are kind of loading up to do much more, creating even more differentiation for Cummins.
Fantastic. We're going to talk about some of your transformational projects, but for our audience who is not as familiar with Cummins, can you just give them a brief idea about some of the, it's a $35 billion company. It does many things, but at its core, how would you describe it? You talked about it becoming carbon neutral. That's a big focus, but what is Cummins all about?
Yeah, I was curious too, a long year ago when I heard Cummins the first time. It's an energy company. It's powering transportation, and then also gensets for data centers. So you mentioned the 5 or 6 segments that we have. We have an engine business, we have a genset business for power generation, a component business, a distribution business, which is a big piece. Distribution is a huge piece. So in general, it's a transportation mobilization through energy company that then has a very centralized value creation on doing it responsibly. And it has been a great journey. And it's a 100-year-old company, so it has meandered and kept with the trend and being able to renovate itself with what is required in the market. We work on many new technologies, including hydrogen, as well as recyclable energy, etc. And more excitingly, some of the engine platforms that we have, or the new engine platforms that are coming in, is flex fuel or flex energy, which basically provides the capability for consumers to be able to buy into a platform and be able to select what energy platform they use. So, in that sense, it's part of a lot of infrastructure around the world, including of course the power generation business, which is a big piece in today's day because of IT systems and IT data systems and data centers running at high end because of the AI journey that's coming up. So it's a broad scale, um, broadly integrated industrial mode, if you like to call, in the energy generation and transportation world.
Great. So it's really powering a lot of transformation that is going on. Um, Jim, today, just to follow up on your point, data centers have become the talk. And I'm talking about AI data centers, AI super data centers, and all kinds of predictions in terms of how the energy requirement is going to change a lot because of this expansion. You see companies like Microsoft and others, they're setting up these data centers around the world. Just as a question, and this is for our AI audience, does Cummins play a role? You talked about gensets in data centers. Uh, Companies are now looking at nuclear and other things. You said you're a forward-thinking company. Uh, are you playing any kind of role in this whole AI data center space?
Yeah, so I think the vantage point I have, Sanjay, is bringing the efficiency solutions, digitalization solutions, and the AI solutions for the use in those areas. There are three areas of focus, if you like, probably a few more, but three areas primary focus. There's an engineering focus on the gensets. There is then an R&D focus for new technology that comes in. And then also there's, in these three that I'm talking about, there's also the part we bring in efficiency through, analytics and digitalization. The core piece, which is engineering, R&D, they're onto a journey of them by themselves to be able to create cutting edge differentiation in the market. What me and my team does is provide them with the digitalization assets, the AI assets, to be able to do that much better, faster, etc. So, from my vantage point, we are engaged with these groups. All of the groups that probably utilize and see the value of creating differentiation with AI and digitalization. And I can tell you, it's creating the differentiation we are looking for, and it's exciting to be able to be a part of that journey with them.
That's great. Jim, you talked about some of the transformational AI applications that you're working on. Tell our audience, because one of the purposes of this platform is really for top AI talent to understand that the real work for AI, the real cutting edge applications, the real where the rubber meets the road is going to be with the Cummins of the world, the Schneiders of the world. This is where it is at, and that's where we want you to use this platform to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and thank you for that question. So when it comes to being able to practice what you've learned, um, specifically in the AI area, you've got to have a few things going for you. If you're going in with a startup, had the experience of doing that, going in with a startup, you're testing or you're practicing in an area which is a dice throw. So you really don't know whether that's going to give a result. and there are so many new capabilities, new technologies coming to the market. So the new entrants are so large that the rate of success is, you don't know where you're putting your money in. So, but in a company that is established and has a track record of doing something significant and transforming with time, now you know that the corridor you're on is a very positive corridor because you're investing in the future. That said, I've worked with many data scientists, many AI experts, many tech experts in my journey, and I've seen them come into Cummins and instantly catch on how the transformation happens, instantly gets excited with what they can collaborate, what they can bring as value. And seeing that is very refreshing. Um, so I'll give you an example. So very recently with this AI journey or the generative AI journey, there was an interest about trying to take some of the data sets that we had, coalescing them into one center and being able to help employees um, with many questions that employees would have from a HR perspective, from a payroll perspective, etc. The data scientists that got involved with it, they actually, they obviously, data scientists are relatively new. You talk about a company that is 100 years old, they're extremely new. So, tendency for them to feel, hey, I came into this company recently and I've been trying to figure out some of this information. I couldn't get it. It's a simple example, but it's an example that uh, meant a lot to those data scientists, at least that team. And the team got in, they put in the requirements that they were looking for to be able to get information out from a small language model that they created. And it was immediately usable. There were many people who were in the test platforms using, getting the information in, and it was autonomously run. You didn't have people getting involved with answering questions and referring and all that. So it was autonomously done, creating significant productivity for the employees. So it's areas like that. That's a simple example. There are very complex examples of using it in a telematics environment for warranty mitigation, or using it in a supply chain area to be able to be to be efficient in supply chain. And though all of them were exciting for the individuals that got into it because they could see the result of the work that they did in far more quicker terms. And I feel that is exciting, is once you do something and you come out of school, or you come out from a practice, you really do want to see and feel that you're providing value to where you're working. So I think that's a big thing, and being able to see value and getting celebrated for that value is, I think, is a significant piece here.
So, Jim, what you're saying again to our audience is, hey, you could go to a startup, but there you'll be looking for use cases. But if you come to a company like Cummins, there are hundreds of use cases for you to really practice your craft. It's got a rich environment. I mean, look at one of the examples that you talked about, building this internal. I mean, you ingested a lot of the data that existed, used probably a small language model, and you saw instant productivity gain. So, uh, but Jim, one of the things that you talked about, and that's important for our audience, there is the ability to innovate, because you said they could do this autonomously. So, talk about that environment of innovation and experimentation to our audience. How does that exist at Cummins?
Yes, it does, and I think it's encouraged piece as well. At least in my team, a bit of a global team, a team in India, I have a team here in the US, and we interactively work on experimentation as well. However, I must say, Sanjay, that even our experiments are based on a business requirement. There has to be very clean and clear value as to why you're doing it. Because at the end of the day, we are resources in a company that is that is for profit. So it's important to make sure that all the resources are lined up that way. So the fundamental piece would be, it is for value. There is a clean a line of sight as to how we create that value, and the experimentation is done. However, um, there are many shiny objects out there when it comes to technology. There's always new capabilities coming in. You can get caught up in that process and just spend a lot of time in science projects that don't create that value. So as we have the guideline of creating value, practicing in the areas that create value, we do all our experimentations in that area as well. Let me give you a quick example on how that happens. So if we are doing, let's say, we're working on some areas in supply chain, we're working on some areas in compliance and in areas like that. So if you're doing that, we will have a test team that is trying to figure out what would be the best application for broad scale adoption. And then we'll have another small team. It could, in some cases, be the same team, but there would be another team that is providing business value to the business user directly. So we get immediate value from creating that business value instance, which is like a um, um, which is like a product that can be utilized to solve the problem. But in the meantime, we will also experiment with other areas to see whether we can improve it even better. So come second generation, third generation of that solution, we are ready with something new to go in with. And that's helpful because you not only get your teams working in areas that the business sees value in, you also get the team to expand on what's the relevant technology that can be used versus, trying everything out. I think going back to something that we discussed before, it's easy to fall for a vendor solution um, because it just seems convenient. It's easy to hear a vendor say, "Hey, I can do that. Sign me a contract, sign me up, and I can do that." But it's difficult to keep the vendor providing. I mean, I can tell you, I can even challenge it to the point where it's hard to see a vendor sustain a relationship for a extended period of time providing solutions. It's easy to see vendors and partners providing a solution, moving out, and then the company utilizing that solution to generate value repeatedly. In my mind, I like vendor partnerships where you utilize a little bit of new technology, new capability, and then you build a lot more inside versus depending completely on the vendor because the economic value proposition for that is not feasible for the company, for the firm. So it's not a win-win. It gets to a point where it becomes a win-lose proposition, and you get to this thing of descending value out of that arrangement. And that's why this nurturing capability inside, practicing capability inside, is a far better return on investment for the company versus depending completely outside.
Yeah. So from a build versus buy proposition, what you're saying is you might buy, but then ultimately you will build it internally because you're a big believer that you need to have that internal capability and not be dependent, at least for core things, from external vendors, right, Jim? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying, Sanjay. Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, right? If you are building differentiated capability, is exactly how that word means. It has to be differentiated capability that you build inside. That's how you create a differentiation. I find it really hard, Sanjay, and I've had this experience many times, that you have an organization, you have a practice subject matter expertise organization, and let's take um, any function for that matter. And the objective, if the objective of the function is to bring a vendor to solve for the problems that they are facing, there's a there's a fundamental flaw there because if you have a team to resolve a problem, they better resolve it. They can get technology solutions to be able to resolve it, but if you're completely depending on a vendor, you've lost out on the whole thing. So I come from the school of thought where you use technology where relevant. You can do a lot with a little technology. So you don't have to have, everything, but you get the technology you need, but you get your subject matter experts connected with your data scientists to build a solution that works for the company. It's hard to find tailored solutions off the shelf outside, especially for analytics and nuanced problems that businesses face. I'll give you a direct example. If we're looking at our supply chain, for instance, and if you're looking at trying to figure out a solution inside our dynamics and our changing world for supply chain, the best knowledge for being able to solve that is with the subject matter experts we have internally. Being able to equip them with the capabilities and tools that my data science team or my development team takes to them is far more powerful than them saying, hey, I have another a vendor who has created a solution for another company who we are going to kind of cobble together and make work. So you do two or three things achieved by that. You have the ownership for the IP. You have created a solution that you can develop and run by yourself. Your cost of maintenance is much less than having a vendor doing it. And you're building the capability. I think which is a very big piece. There is no capability build at broad scale in companies when it comes to new technology. You always tend to use a vendor or a specialized group of people. If you are able to also expand your employee base to say, hey, I'm going to equip you, I'm going to also give you tools to be able to do your job better, you're going to achieve a lot more because it's just like Microsoft Excel, right? It is ubiquitously available for everybody. There was a point of time where it was not. But once that paradigm shifted and everybody goes to a Microsoft Excel sheet to use it for doing spreadsheet calculation, you don't even think about it. The amount of productivity that he has brought to you is tremendous and it's very high. That practice doesn't happen. It's still companies. I have seen that, in some pockets at Cummins too, where you kind of use another person to be able to do the job versus, learning the capability and doing it yourself. So my job here is also to educate the teams to be able to use some of these tools and for these tools to be available for them to be able to produce business value. That's why I feel that make, in many cases, not in all cases, because if it's a ERP system and all that, where you need structured process systems, accuracy and all that, yeah, sure, you need that. But when you talk about analytics and being able to infer information to be able to get business results or get the data so that you can organizationally execute on that data, that's something you should build the capability inside.
No, that's you made some fantastic points that I want to kind of follow up. Jim, one question I have that has come in from your peers. You talked a lot about value, that how do you don't want to do things unless there is a ROI or a value. Oh, some of your peers want to know what kind of ROI do you look for some of these AI systems? Is it tangible? Is it intangible? Because some of these are relatively new. Now, your internal system that you created, there is a probably an ROI in terms of efficiency, time saved, etc. But this is one of the big challenges your peers are facing, so they would like to hear from you on this.
Hmm. Yeah, it is an important area for sure, Sanjay. Um, earlier in my career, I had a mentor who said, make a proposal that I cannot say no to, and I will take it, right? I have not met anybody who has said no to a good proposal and a good return on investment. I love to look at 10x return and then think about it in terms of how the company looks at, an ROIC based return once you make an investment. And if you are giving back, 2, 3 times what you have taken, I think you are in good shape. And you're able to continue to provide value. So with that in mind, there are, I'd say, 10, 15, 20% of the projects that you just got to do to be able to get the door open for you to be able to do the 10x projects, right? Those are important, but those shouldn't be your primary. The primary should be being able to do a project, taking something that is a big business challenge, That's a massive headache for the business owner or the business side. Being able to get the subject matter expert who can resolve that problem organizationally, providing him or her the intelligence required to be able to do it, that's worked really well. I'll tell you one or two things though, Sanjay, in this. It is a significant challenge to be able to convince business teams to see the value in what you bring in and monetize that value for the company. What I mean by that is if a business unit has said, look, we are going to sell $100,000 of product and we are going to make 20% out of it, $20,000, that's a committed set of numbers that they're providing to the CFO, for instance. You come back and you work with my team and as a business team, and you are able to generate $5,000, $10,000 more. What the business teams want to do is use that inside that parameter, inside that framework of 100,000 at 20%. What happens inevitably is that the finance team would take the contributions that the analytics team made or the performance team made, try to isolate that from that 20%. So you get this confusion happen all the time. The business owner doesn't want to put that as an additional piece, obviously. The finance person would love to see that as an additional piece because, hey, you gave me a commitment of 20%. Now you've gone and achieved another 5% more because of this corporate function that we pay for from the corporation. So that discussion becomes real cumbersome quagmire of a discussion. So being able to isolate that in the beginning is very important. You go to a business and negotiate something that, in my case, with my teams, I try to negotiate a percentage at least out of that to say, hey, we are going to do this project to you. We'll give you X amount. We'll take 10% out of that, 20% out of that, and we'll give that to corporate as contribution. So that has been the challenge. Now, once you do one or two of these and the business or the function sees the value you bring, this becomes a big problem. And, one of my mentors here in Cummins uh, taught this to me. He said, first of all, you're going to have a problem with capability. Establish capability. Your next problem is you're going to have a problem with capacity. It's a great problem to have, capacity. To have problems with capacity, because now everybody wants your capability and you have X amount of people. But then technology brings the solution of being able to do much more with less people or less capacity. That's a good formula to kind of abide by, but it starts with being able to show that capability and going in with the smaller projects, earning the trust and being able to do something big for a bigger return.
So earning the trust. Jim, you kind of talked a little bit how, finance and business system companies, you get hidden in there. Do you think with the so much of talk and hype about AI, the C-level, C-suite is now looking at you or the board, looking at this as a real strategic advantage or a strategic value? Because a lot of your peers talk about that how things have changed, that they are being looked at really not as a cost or an efficient thing, but this is really a big strategic value for the organization. Have you noticed that, or is that something still in the works?
No, I think I'm proud to be sitting here because it's the reason why we have a function that I am running is because the company thinks very highly of the function. And it has generated a lot of value. I mean, I can tell you tens of millions of dollars of value that we have created and generated back to the company, and it goes on. I think, though, Sanjay, every company um, has to have and does have a very good analytics strategy because they see the value in it. And it's a fact. I mean, companies like Cummins are evolving consistently, right? You do a merger, you do a divestiture, you do an acquisition, your company fundamentals change, and so thereby changes the business dynamic. So it's a perpetual kind of change that is required to be structured. That said, um, external challenges are not also constant. The only constants in external challenges that is keep changing, that it keeps changing all the time. So I think with that, um, having an analytics group is one thing. I think you do need to have that fundamentally, but having an efficient analytics team is way more um, uh, has way more payback. And what I mean by that is, this thing about creating point solutions. I would challenge any company that they have created themselves a problem by falling into the romance of a quick solution. You fall in for a quick point solution, you get what you want then and there, you go solve your business problem. Your whole solution architecture and the cost for that is all gone. It's a one-time situation. Whereas if you build something where you can come back to it over and over and over again, you're now creating sustainable value for the company. And in Cummins, I've talked about this in a couple of areas as well. We're out in a conference and we talked about this, which is we created this thing called the digital core. And the digital core is a collection of information for the relevant topics of solution only. And remember, this is in the sphere, in the universe of analytics, inferring into information so that you can make better business decisions. Very different from an ERP or an operating system run. But when we talk about the digital core, we are solving for one problem. Let's say it's a sourcing problem, it's a supply chain problem, it's a finance problem. We would bring all that relevant information into that digital core, and we'll have the information in a succinct way, in a way that is categorized so that we can use it over and over. That data set provides a solution for what we're looking for. But when we go back and we do a second one, let's say the second one is about logistics, we would bring that data set also into this digital core. Here's the trick in that. When you do the first one or two, you kind of only, you still perceived as a point solution provider. But the second one, which is connected to that core again, creates exponential value as you go on. You do one or two, three, five of them. Now, when you're solving for new problems, you're doing it faster. You're doing it with far more end-to-end visibility and end-to-end implications, etc. But what is also hidden in that entire thing is when you're solving problems for a company, be it Cummins, be it any company, I think from the experiences that I have had, the set of problems you're solving, Sanjay, are very, very common. It is very rare that a company is solving problems that are unheard of. If you're solving problems that are unheard of, there's a different issue going on. But the industries that we're engaged in, the competition dynamics and the landscape we're engaged in, the business operating rhythm that we're engaged with has a very similar set of problems. So when you're creating this kind of digital twin of the data sets that you're required for problem solving, you're actually focusing on that only. You don't have to focus on creating a whole data architecture and landscape and having all the data ready for you, etc. Because you do one acquisition or one divestiture, all that changes. But when you create the information in one place that is relevant to business success, you're now going back to a very relevant data set to be able to solve for that problem. That's why that digital core becomes richer as you go forward. And I've seen that happen. 2, 3, 5 companies I've kind of consulted for and done this with. It's working. And it's working because the common set of problems are what you go after all the time.
So obviously, it is working. What you're kind of talking about, Jim, is that good data scientists are very, very important. So uh, that's something I think that you emphasize that several times. So one of the questions that has come in for you is what do you look for when you're looking to bring somebody on your team? What are the key traits or qualities that you look for? This is from people who want to join your team, Jim.
Yeah. So thanks, Sanjay. I think the big thing is you go to a trade school, you go to a specialized school to be able to use that inside a real application. So going back to what we talked about first thing is, your practice converts into value. That's a big gratification for you. So that's the first thing. So I would look at the reverse side of it. I'll look at people who have the idea of being able to create value using their tool versus talking about their tool as the value. And I think we all get wrapped around this, the tools and the dynamics, right? Around it. But not most of the time, I don't see people looking at the value part of it. I have interviewed many people who tell me, I've got all these certifications that I have used all these tools. My first question has been, which one did you use to be able to create, XYZ value? And they stumble on because they don't look at it like that. I mean, when you're an engineering professional, you're so engrossed and so romantically involved with what you really are learning and the tool set you're learning in. You are not able to step. I had that same problem. I was an engineer when I started. I went into a business guy, and then I fell in love with business for a while, and then vice versa. But until the day I looked at all of that as background that creates me, um, and then I'm able to create with those things, create the value. When do you go to a doctor, ask him about his curricula that he studied in school? You go to a doctor and tell him, can fix my problem. And the guy does magic, or the gal does magic and fixes your problem. You're happy and the doctor is happy. So I think it's similar to that, to say, how do you, where is the cross center? Where is the inflection point of your tools or your knowledge you're being able to use that to create value? And so looking at that now for newcomers, I understand it's a tough one because they have not had the experience and the practice knowledge. But you come out of that, you focus on value, how you've created value. And I have also found that when I interview some of the data scientists or the data engineers, the career data architects that we bring in, um, as soon as they talk, they center themselves on value and they show me, these are the three things that I've done to create X amount of value. You immediately forget about the technical discussion because you're there at that interview because you're technically qualified to do all that stuff. You don't need to demonstrate any of that. You need to demonstrate the value part of it. And so it's in a nutshell, it's, use your craft to be able to create value. And once you do that repeatedly and you're able to talk in those terms, companies want to embrace you because companies look for you because of value you can create, that sort of thing.
So the key word, I think, for our listeners who are looking at Cummins is value. That don't look at the tools, look at the value that you are creating. And if you're a fresher, how will you create value is what I think Jim is saying, and which
I
is,
think that, yeah, right.
yeah, that's a very important point you made. Uh, Jim, you talked a lot about data scientists, etc. Data is key, as you very well know. How do you secure that data and data privacy at Cummins? Can you just talk a little bit about that? How important is that?
Yeah, it is a very important area in Cummins, obviously, because of number one, we want to protect our differentiation so that we create the differentiated value for our customers. That said, there are many elements of data exposure. There's data exposure from product side of things. There is data exposure on information sharing because we're a large multinational company that creates that. And then there's also data exposure by just, sheer sharing information up and down. And now with the new generative AI piece, that's a new paradigm of data exposure. We have data security officer, cybersecurity officer who has been appointed recently, and there's a very acute focus on how we govern data, how we keep data inside, etc. So my short answer to that is yes, yes, and yes. We do have a lot of focus on there. That said, I don't think any company can do enough to be able to protect yourself, and we go the extra mile to be able to do that. And we have some proprietary data protection areas too. But like I said, the engine side of things or the product side of things, it's very crucial that we have that information well secure. So the short answer is yes, Sanjay, and the longer answer would be much longer in terms of what we can do or what we do actually.
So we talked about data security, data governance. Let's talk about AI governance. There is a lot of talk about ethics in AI, the issue of bias. Large companies, and I talk to chief AI officers all the time, they have AI ethics committees, etc. Talk a little bit about how are you dealing with this whole issue of governance, ethics, bias as far as AI is concerned to our listeners.
Yeah. So from the AI side of it, just AI machine learning and deep learning side of it, it's slightly different because it has been around for a longer time. Uh, versus the generative AI piece. The generative AI piece, brand new. You're right. There are significant concerns about the ethics around it, about the governance of it, etc. We have a task team that's looking at how we can protect the company, obviously moving forward, uh, and also exploit the technology to the best that we can, for the benefit of our customers. I think the big issue right now for us is it goes back to the value composition, right? If you can't see value in something that is so unclear, you might as well not engage in it as much. So that's the general feeling. As a technology guy, I would like to use these capabilities. I see them in 2 or 3 categories. I see retail capability means day-to-day use of generative AI. There are plenty of tasks that we can look at. Could be inside the parameters of the company, or inside the firewall, if you like, of the company, which is things like building PowerPoints, building information sets, referring information, reference of historical information, etc. However, when it comes to outside, being able to open, let's say, a maintenance bot that can open out to all our partners to be able to talk to it and get information out, that's a different level of sophistication. We don't have that. We're working on something that could be like that, but I have not seen that outside either. I mean, I've seen some platforms on the pop platforms like Microsoft and Google where you can get in and have an interactive dialogue, but I don't think there have been still companies have still plugged in background intelligence set or proprietary information that they would go out with. So I think it's early stages, Sanjay, for any of that to happen. We are in the exploratory stage ourselves to be able to create the right parameter, right uh, responsibility set so that we can do more. But I see the opportunity, significant opportunity in how we can exploit this going forward. But we are at that, like I said, at that experimentation stage at this point.
Experimentation state, but moving forward. Jim, what are some of the significant challenges that you see towards AI adoption? You talked just about some of them, but any more?
Yeah, I think there is need to break it down. So you look at deep learning as a subject. You're deep learning to infer from the data that you have, by putting stuff together and making sense out of it. Machine learning is when you, as you all know, when you're taking that deep learning, you're collating it with the database sets, with all the available information, and creating some knowledge. The AI piece of it, which is where you take that information and create a business decision or create a set of data sets for making a business decision, I think is very private for companies, very personal, so to say, because it's the foundation of the differentiation you want to create. So the adoption, I think, has to happen with that piece of education I explained to you before about. You need to get your business and functional leaders understanding what the AI piece can do, just like that, crude Excel example I gave you, understanding that piece. If you don't, what happens is you create these two universes where you have the business leader with a business problem that goes into a technology guy that creates a problem, and they're both not right. So you have to kind of cross the chasm to bring both of them much closer together, where there is a common Venn intersection that then creates the capability and the knowledge, so that the technology guys can get the deep learning, machine learning, coalesce it, give it to the business leader who can then utilize that. So what I'm saying in a in a broad sense is that you need to have the skill set of doing analytics. If you're a business person, if you're a functional person, you need to have that. Gone are the days where there's an ERP department that gave you a report that you can infer with and go on. So that's where I think the world is going into. With that, the requirement for, or the necessity for AI capability, being a business person, is far more acute now than it was before. And that's where I think the opportunity is going to arise from, as business leaders expand their knowledge base to bring in a few more tools into their repertoire.
That's great. Jim, can you talk a little bit about some of the tools and technologies that Cummins is using to give our listeners an idea about some of the cutting edge tools and technologies, especially focused on AI or data analytics? Yeah.
Right. No, thanks for that. That's an important piece, because I think, again, when you're talking value to businesses, you go and talk to them about tools. That's the biggest put off. They're not very interested in the tools, and rightly so, because they have a business problem to solve, and they have employed you because you have the knowledge set. I think I think it's important, like I was explaining with the digital core, I think it's important to bring relevant data set for relevant problems. This is the first thing. And that's what we have enabled with the digital core. We will only bring data sets that are the most challenging. And over a period of time, you have now built a very, very strong uh, data mart, if you like, or a data center, if you like, for business solutions, very designed for business solutions. So you could call it designed for business solution data versus bringing all the data. Okay, that's number one. Second thing is, you need to be able to infer with that information. You have to have a schematic layer to be able to look at that data, not in raw form. I keep going back to this Excel analogy. If you think about it, you get raw data into an Excel sheet. The very first thing you want to do is put rows and columns and put headers, and then make sense of that information. In a crude sense, that is the schematic layer. That schematic layer is so imperative for anybody using data, because you don't want to be able to go and filter in raw data. So that schematic is extremely important. And then comes the presentation layer. That's where I was just talking earlier about, where the business and the function leaders who are in their functions are able to very easily interact, interfere with, interrogate the data, so that they can create the business intelligence they need to go with. So the piece I think that is strong amongst the whole thing in today's terms is graph technology. There are several companies that have graph capability. That is where, you know, gone are the old days where you got to index databases, connect databases together, etc., and so on. You don't need any of that stuff. Graph capability has all of that to be able to do it already. So that data set, to transcend the data that goes through information through a good schematic for your information, so that you can then say, hey, I'm going to collect this country, this product, these sets of problems, and clicking them. I'm not doing anything else, but I'm clicking them. 5 clicks, and then you have the information ready for you. That's the sort of sophistication that you want to inculcate in your company, so that you don't really need to start a project with 15 people from various functions coming together to solve for a problem. You need some of that, but you don't need that on a running basis. What you need is information at your fingertips. And this organization of this process is, I think, that's the way I have done it, and it's been successful. And that's probably paramount for businesses.
No, so that's great to know. Graph technologies, and this is for your peers, is something that you really are high on and think that's a big piece of what you're doing. Several of your colleagues on the show have also mentioned graphs, so I think that's tremendously validated. Uh, Jim, I have like a zillion other questions. We could go on, but towards the end of the show, we do a lightning round of questions where we would like a one word answer from you. In your case, we'll make a little exception. Some exception, you could pick both. So are you ready for that?
I am.
Okay, let's go. So, Jim, what would you prefer, GPUs or TPUs?
GPUs.
Python or R?
R.
TensorFlow or PyTorch?
PyTorch.
Cloud or on-prem?
Cloud for sure.
Okay. Final one, open source or closed source?
Depends. Closed source if you want to create differentiation, open source if you want that to be the trend for the industry.
You did very good.
Thank you.
Excellent. Jim, now this is your opportunity to give some final words of wisdom or recommendations to our listeners. Some of them are CEOs who are setting up AI departments in Fortune 500 companies, and some of them are looking to set up a chief AI officer role. So two things, if you can address as final pieces of wisdom. Setting up, like Cummins did, this department, what would you be giving that advice? And somebody who's looking to bring on, CEO is looking to, or the board is looking to bring on a chief AI officer. If you can just address this to our audience, that will be very helpful.
Right. Creation of an AI or analytics organization, I think in the contemporary world of business, it's a necessity that you cannot do without. So I would go with saying, do it, but do it with a mindset that you're going to invest in it first, and then be able to look for the returns that come in with the differentiation. With that comes in the most important part is to find the right people to be able to do that for you. And I think that's where some of the mistakes are made, because you fall for the technical capabilities, you fall for somebody who has done all kinds of words that I can't even pronounce, stuff. But you ask them for where did you do a business solution, and they actually are stuck. They can't tell you about it. So if you're going to solve a business problem or a set of business problems by bringing in an analytics group, then look for a person who has done that versus looking for somebody and expecting different results, right? That doesn't happen. And I think the balance of that, being able to invest in creating of the structure, being able to find the right person who can actually create the value and generally talks your language. And if you're a farming company, it's really unlikely for you to have success by bringing an engineering guy with engineering experience that have done, machine manufacture. He might be able to make the gap, but it wouldn't work for you that fast. So I think as a company, look at it deliberately, and you must do it because everybody else competing with you are doing it. Looking for the right person, I think get a person who has actually demonstrated value creation. Doesn't matter what the technology is, because technology is amply available ubiquitously in the world today. That should not be the issue. The focus should be how they use those tools to create value.
So, for our listeners who are looking to set up AI departments, is invest in it, but find the right people, not just the technical people, but the right people who have done it before and have created value. I think that's the message, Jim, that you
Yeah,
are.
no, I think so. And it's a trend of the time, Sanjay, that if you take 7-10 years ago, you might have bought a technology person in because that was the time for that. All that is gone now. Technology is rooted in our world, in our lives, etc. You don't need that. It's available. Now you're looking for value creators using that technology. So that's probably the kind of the paradigm shift.
Awesome. Jim, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the CIO podcast. Your insights into the intersection of AI, advanced analytics, and global operations of Cummins are truly inspiring. And really, thank you for sharing your journey and expertise with us today. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the CIO podcast for more conversations with leaders in the AI industry. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the world of AI. I'm Sanjay Puri, and this has been the CAIO podcast. Jim, thank you so much. This was fantastic. I could have gone for an hour more. There were so many other questions, but really, thank you. It's been fabulous.
Thank you, Sanjay. Appreciate the opportunity.